All right, we are back. We're continuing to run through the post-week 1 People's Panic Meter with the great Justin Boone. And we've got to talk through Tucker Kraft, I guess. Lou sends in this email on Tucker Kraft. Hey, Matt, while Tucker Kraft's 8.9 points scored on 2 catches for 19 yards and a touchdown was a respectable fantasy day for a tight end, I crunched the numbers to see what his line would have looked like if he had not scored on his first reception, and the results chilled me to the bone. He would have had a far less respectable 2.9 points on 2 catches and 19 yards with 0 touchdowns. Are our hopes of a slightly more consolidated target allocation, albeit largely injury-driven, already dashed? Will he remain among the touchdown or bust tight ends, or is there any hope he can level up a bit in his 3rd season? And that's, I'm not trying to laugh at you, buddy, because we love you, Lou. You know, listen to the podcast. We appreciate the hell out of you, buddy, but we never don't go number crunching what it would have looked like if he hadn't scored a touchdown. He did. You got the points. Just take them. Just take them. Never go number crunching. That's for the goofball analysts to do. Not you, Lou. Just take the points and be happy.
I want to give Lou the benefit of the doubt here and say that Lou was purposely trying to be like a little bit funny to get this one through, right? Like with that kind of comical equation. I'm not worried about Kraft. And in part, like, you know, if he fails the season, I mean, maybe part of me just like kind of being worried about this would be we might have to like shut down the podcast. Like we might have to like hand in our fantasy analyst badges. Like we have talked about this guy so much that if he doesn't come through, we might be in trouble, Harmon. But this is one that we saw coming. Like I wrote an article in August about players that have the hardest early season schedules. And who was the tight end that I talked about in that one? It was Tucker Kraft. And you look at what Kraft did, like, or what he was going to have to face here, right? Like the Lions, the Commanders, the Browns, and the Cowboys. Those are the first 4 matchups for him. They were all in the top 7 for fewest fantasy points allowed to tight ends last year. So that is not great, even though we really were targeting this guy in the middle rounds as the tight end we wanted if we didn't get one of those elite tight ends. But specifically the Lions, and I wrote this in that column, he's never topped 45 yards in any of his 4 contests against the Lions. So did we really think that all of a sudden he was going to come out in this game and have this really big performance when, let's face it, like they controlled that game. They really didn't need to do that. So no, I'm not worried about this one at all. I'm happy that he came through with the touchdown. I think in the first month here, we might need either the touchdown or weeks where he does get a little more volume in order to get over some of these tougher matchups. But overall, no, not worried at all. If you can go out and get him, if you can buy him low, I'd be doing that all month long. If he has, down games, try to go get him because I think it's going to get a lot better as the season goes along. And if you have him, I'm holding him, and I'm holding him with no panic whatsoever.
Yeah, in terms of like, will he be touchdown or bust? That is most tight ends, honestly. And, even if Tucker Kraft has the season that we were hoping he had in the offseason, he's still going to be a little bit touchdown or bust because he's not Trey McBride. He's not Brock Bowers. Like, great player, but he's probably not those guys. But still, like, everything coming out of week 1, you got the points, so you got the touchdown, which is good in a game where, like Boone said, they were controlling that one. They didn't have to take to the air very often. That certainly is not going to be the case in week 2 against the Commanders, who looked pretty good on offense to start their season. So I think that's going to be an important one to track. And otherwise, like, playing time, exactly what you want. He led the team in routes, 78.3% route participation, 18.2% target share, tied for second on the team behind the great Jaden Reed. Shout out to Jaden Reed for he doesn't have a foot, but he's playing football. So just a tough as nails player. So yeah, no panic on Tucker Kraft. He is still a guy that, and I say this as somebody that has Tucker Kraft on just a ton of fantasy teams. I'm starting him next week without any real reservations or hesitations. Next one that we've got here, Eric V sent in an email with a few players, okay? But the one I really want to highlight first is Nico Collins. I love it. He just listed off 4 names. Nico Collins, Josh Jacobs. I don't know what you're paying about with Josh Jacobs. Come on, give me a break. George Pickens, Tyrone Tracy. Send help, okay? Just the names and send help with an A. Well, let's talk about Nico Collins here, Boone. Nico Collins, what's the level of panic after he was, yes, yet another one of those top-level wide receivers that did not have a strong start to his season?
Yeah, none. Like, are you out there panicked that Jamar Chase was held under, 30 yards? Are you worried about that? I'm not. I'm not worried about Collins. And, I don't think we need to really worry about almost anybody on that list of, like, the top receivers. And not to go off on a tangent here, but, like, the list of those guys, like Amon-Ra St. Brown is somebody that maybe we're shaving a little bit off the top of his projection based on what the Lions look like. Brian Thomas Jr. was another one of the top guys. And like,
we'll get
with
to
him now, he's got to deal with Travis Hunter. Like, there's some guys in there that maybe you could like really push, but all of them are going to be fine. These are all great talents. These are guys that are going to be able to come through for you. So I'm not that worried, but also I'm not the receiver guy. So maybe you should be telling me whether you're worried or not.
Yeah, I would say the one thing that we learned from the Houston Texans in week 1 is they don't trust their rookies yet. No Christian Kirk in this game, and Jaden Higgins and Jalen Noel still ran like sub 15 routes in the game. They were behind. I knew they'd likely be behind Xavier Hutchinson. Been talking about that for a while, that he was going to be this year's Matt Collins, like plays more than people think. But then, what a title, by the way, this year's Matt Collins. Put that one on the everyone wants to find who's the next Bucky Irving. No. I'm going to tell you who the next Matt Collins is. That's why you subscribe to this podcast. So stupid. But okay, so I knew they were going to be behind Xavier Hudson, but Justin Watson played more than these guys. Did not see that one coming. Okay, that was weird. So they don't trust these rookies yet. That means that Nico Collins, he doesn't have any competition for targets. As long as these, at some point the rookies will play more, Higgins and Noel, no question. The only thing that stood out to me too is that they did not play Collins anymore like in the slot. 10.4% slot rate in this game. Justin Watson, for whatever reason, was the slot receiver. I don't know what that's about. I think I kind of want to just throw this game in the trash for the Texans, to be honest with you, because the new offensive coordinator, Nick Caley, comes from the Rams. So while we had, hey, this is it's going to be a new offense. Maybe the protection rules are better. Well, nobody's going to know the protection rules better than the place that he just came from, right, in the LA Rams. Also, that front with Jared Verse and the boys is insane. Also, get this route chart off my screen. Like that, this is crazy. This tweet pissed me off. Like this tweet about somebody free Nico Collins from Houston. Nico Collins, had 2 great seasons in Houston. Give me a break. Also, these next gen route charts are cool when the player has a big game. They're like 0% instructive when the player doesn't get targeted because they only show the targeted route. So sorry, you've triggered the route guy here on the show. But anyways, I've talked too much, Boone. Please take it from here. I'm just not worried about like a bad performance against a Rams front like Jared Verse and those guys. They're going to kick a lot of ass all season long, the Texans included.
Yeah, it does highlight the one area that might be concerning for the Texans, and that's the fact that the offensive line is just this huge question mark. And in a matchup like this, they did not get it done, and I don't think that we really expected them to excel in this one by any means. But that could be like the Achilles heel for this offense. It kind of was last year. I think it could be again, but still, I'm not that worried about Nico Collins. The fact that they don't have a great rushing attack, that's also a problem. But Nico Collins is one of these talents that he is going to still have these boom games. He is going to come through. Not worried about him at all. When we look at like the other names in this question, though, you touched on, Josh Jacobs, we can go through really quick. That's a fine game from Josh Jacobs, right? He came away with like 70 yards and a touchdown. And it was against a defense who was top 5 against fantasy running backs last year. Like, yeah, you got lucky that you came away with that stat line. Josh Jacobs is going to be fine. George Pickens, another guy, really tough matchup against a strong defense, the defending Super Bowl champs. He comes out, gets frustrated a little bit in that one. There are going to be much, much better days ahead for Pickens. Not worried about him. He's still in that kind of borderline low-end wide receiver 2, high-end wide receiver 3 range. I really like him. And then somebody else that I think is interesting here is Tyrone Tracy, right? Like, he didn't have a big game in terms of his production, but when you look at the underlying metrics from a usage standpoint, this is exactly what we projected, right? The beat writers were saying a 70-30 split. And what happened? He played 74% of the snaps this week. He had 15 touches, and it didn't turn into a lot. But I look at the other guys in that backfield, and I don't think Devin Singletary is that much of a threat. And so, okay, people get really fired up about the Cam Scatterbo highlights, but what's happening in these highlights? He's trucking guys. He's knocking guys over. He's modern day Mike Allstotting people. And yet, look at his stat line. It was like 2 carries for -3 yards or something like that. Like, he looks slow out there. He does not, to me anyway, look like a guy who's coming to take over this backfield. I don't know that Cam Scatterbo is going to eventually become this like meaningful pro player. I don't really see him as somebody who's going to be like a fantasy star down the road. So I think Tyrone Tracy has this backfield, and there'll be better days. And I think he'll still be in that low end RB2 kind of flex mix for you. He's just not a league winner. And I know people don't get like overly excited about those kind of guys that don't have that top 5 upside potentially. But he's still somebody that where you were getting him in drafts can slot into your lineup as an RB2 or a flex and be fine if you spend your early picks wisely and you filled out the rest of your lineup. I have teams like that I think are going to be just fine with him on it.
Yeah, I always come back to this on this show, Boone, that it's like panic relative to what? It's not like you spent that much draft capital to acquire Tyrone Tracy in your fantasy football leagues. Like he's the Giants starting running back. There's going to be some down weeks, spoiler alert, no matter who's the starting running back for the New York Giants. And then, on George Pickens, like there's going to be some volatility with any of these receivers. Again, as we've talked about constantly so far, there's going to be up and down play with receivers, but especially for a guy that is the pure perimeter player going against the Eagles, where I was a little surprised to see Quinyon Mitchell tracking George Pickens on the outside. That was interesting. Didn't expect that to happen. But that was just, again, they wanted to slow him down on the outside. That I think, again, he plays the Giants this week, does George Pickens. You think he's not going to dust a couple of those Giants cornerbacks? If he doesn't, then we have another conversation next week here on the People's Panic Meter. But that's actually a good transition to our next email, which comes in from Micah. Drafted guy that was going in kind of the same-ish tier, Calvin Ridley, over the likes of Zay Flowers, and I started him. I know he had a very tough matchup against a great Broncos defense, but he committed a couple of bad drops. What's your feeling about Ridley after this weekend? I will say, Boone, I mean, Micah touched on the matchup. We all know that. We also know Calvin Ridley's going to put a couple balls on the ground. Like if you've watched Calvin Ridley over the last 2 seasons, he's going to have some bad drops. Like that's going to be a part of it. Is it a shame that some of those were maybe the best throws that Cam Ward made? Although, God, he's got to take some RPMs off that ball a little bit. Otherwise, these guys are going to continue to drop that thing. But still, you're a wide receiver. Catch the football, please. Come on, that's your job. It's a shame that those were some of Ward's better throws and better opportunities to get Ridley when he was open. But, like, he's going to drop a few. I'm not too – how worried are you coming off of this dud game for Calvin Ridley?
Yeah, I'm not that worried at all. I think Micah answered their own question here, right? Like it was the matchup. We knew going into this one. I write my start sit column. It goes up on Friday mornings. And who was the receiver that I highlighted as a sit? It had to be Ridley because we knew he was going to go against Pat Surtain. And what ended up happening, right? Like Surtain really shadowed him. Like he shadowed him the vast majority. We don't always see that. Normally a player can like get away a little bit and still put up some stats. In this one, he was on him like basically all game. And Ridley did not do that much because of it. There are going to be much better days. The volume is still going to be there. There's maybe one rookie who's kind of emerging, and we're going to talk about a little bit in this offense. But in terms of who's going to be that top target for Cam Ward all year long, it's going to be Ridley, and the volume's going to be there. And I'm not even somebody that likes Ridley that much, so it's weird for me to be sitting here kind of defending him after week 1. But I just look at that setting for him and the volume that he's going to get there, and I think he is going to be a fine play as a wide receiver 3 in your fantasy lineups.
Yeah, I did like Ridley in drafts this year, maybe a little bit more than Boone did. But yeah, 32% target share coming out of this game. Like that's what we expected, but we know there's going to be bumps in the road with a rookie quarterback going on the road in another game that was a freaking weather delay. By the way, another freaking weather delay from this week in that Titans-Broncos game. Best defense in the league, shadow coverage from the reigning defensive player of the year. That's just games like this are going to happen.
I will say, too, before we move on, one way that you could kind of put a positive on this is on the season in my strength of schedule matrix, the Titans receivers had the 5th easiest schedule on the year, and that was counting this week 1 game, knowing it was going to be so difficult. So the rest of the way, it is going to be a very positive schedule, so that's kind of a little more wind at his back, hopefully, the rest of the way.
Let's stick in this next one in that game, actually. Chaz Y sends in a rant just titled Dolphins, and then, talks about Tua, Waddle. We already covered that. Also talks about some players they had on their bench that the team, their team's cooked, they say. But the question here is also Bo Nix looked terrible against the Titans. Like, what's up with that? So, Boone, I got to say, if you drafted Bo Nix to be like your standalone QB1, which people were doing, I was not one of them, I'd be pretty weirded out by what was honestly just forget fantasy. This was a bad game from Bo Nix at home in the opener against a Titans team that it's maybe I think they could maybe be a solid defense, but it's not like they're going against their own defense in Denver over there.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Nix is interesting because, like, prospect wise coming out, I don't know about you, but I feel like a lot of people were down on him. I was down on him as a
Yes,
prospect coming
people
in.
were. Yeah,
And
yeah.
then last year, he gets attached to Sean Payton. He comes out and he has this really solid fantasy season. He can run. He looks a little more competent than at least I expected, gives you those top 10 numbers. But I wasn't like projecting that he was going to build from that, right? Like I wasn't projecting that all of a sudden we were going to see this new ceiling for him. I had him ranked kind of right where he finished last year as like that mid to low
Yeah.
end QB1. And I thought he was going to be kind of the same player, maybe slightly better, but I wasn't projecting him to have like that much more this year. Now, was this a down game? Like, absolutely it was. But you look at, I mean, if you're worried, right, this week he tossed 176 yards, a touchdown, 2 picks. He had a fumble as well. Last year, he didn't throw a touchdown until week 4. His stat lines were 138 passing yards and 2 picks in week 1,
Jeez.
246 and 2 picks in week 2, 216, no touchdowns, no picks in week 3. You weren't, I know he was running a little bit in those games, but you weren't feeling particularly great about Bo Nix at that point. And yet he turns it around and puts up top 10 stats for fantasy on the season on a per game basis. I think it's going to be probably just fine for him. And it's really not that I have this insane belief in Bo Nix. It's more that I have this belief in Sean Payton that they're going to get this right. He'll figure out whatever mistakes they made. They have enough talent around him. I think Nix will be fine where you took him, but he's not somebody that's going to win you your fantasy league. And that's why you and I didn't end up with that much of him based on where he was going in drafts.
Yeah, I think the thing that would perturb me if I was a Knicks bro is the 18 rushing yards, right? Because this was my fear, was that now that they have 2 running backs that they can actually play, we saw a lot of not a lot, but a little more than you probably want of like Tyler Bidet. But J.K. Dobbins and R.J. Harvey, 11.7 yards per carry for old R.J. Harvey because of that 50-yard run. J.K. Dobbins just 16 for 63 and a touch. Like, they've got a real run game now. They don't need Bo Nix to be like the engine of the run game like he was last year. So I think from a fantasy standpoint, he's going to take a step back there. And then in the passing game, this was still kind of what it was last year. Cortland Sutton and a bunch of dudes in his orbit. So I just don't know that we saw a lot of like progression in the passing game. It's just 1 week. Like maybe Troy Franklin emerges. Marvin Mims. He's Marvin Mims. I'm still skeptical that he's like a real wide receiver. So, we'll just have to see with some of this stuff. But we didn't see any progression in the pass game, and we saw the run game actually be real. I think both of those are bad news for Bo Nix as a fantasy quarterback, even if it can be good news for the Denver Broncos offense. But let's get to the big one here, Boone. This one's got to be a tough conversation. Mark S. sends in this email on Kenneth Walker. Love the pod, guys, but I clearly didn't listen to you on this one. Why did I put myself in this situation? I knew Zach Charbonnet was a monster, and still, here I am. Please tell me I'm overreacting and Kenneth Walker is going to be great. It's just a foot injury leading to a slow start. I don't know if you can, though. Damn it. All the best. Leather Rut, I guess. Okay, so Kenneth Walker. Not great. I will say of the people he's saying like didn't listen to, you didn't listen to Scott Pianowski because this was totally Scott's like call that it was going to be Charbonnet over Kenneth Walker. I was kind of a centrist, but very pro. I wanted to take both of these guys, like take your shots, but I was still comfortable taking Kenneth Walker in the 4th round. The Kenneth Walker teams aren't looking so good right now, Justin Boone. So where are we on the Kenneth Walker panic meter?
I don't normally overreact, but I'm going to say that we're in the total panic zone on this one. I am very, very concerned. I mean, I was touting Walker all summer. We've seen him post really, really strong per game stats in the past, even last year, RB12 in fantasy points per game last season. And yeah, I mean, it was touched on there, right? Like there was this foot injury that kept him out. And if we look at that a little bit closer, the foot injury kept him out. They had that preseason game where all the running backs looked great. And right around that time, we had Mike McDonald come out and really challenge Walker in the media. He said, like, he's got to get back out here. He's got to string some practices together if he wants to be that guy. And Walker immediately shows up at practice that week and practices all week. And all of a sudden he's back, right? Did he rush back? Is that a concern? Did he come back because he was worried? And now it's kind of showing up that he's not totally 100%. Like, I think anything is on the table here. And it's also on the table because we have the quotes from McDonald today, right? Like he said, this could go any way. They could get more touches. it didn't really give a clear directive on who was going to be the lead back, just that both these guys could get more work here. So I am concerned. And maybe it was the cowardly approach, but remember, I was saying you could draft both these players. And on a lot of teams, that's what I did because I felt so strongly about this rushing attack from what we saw in the summer that I thought at least one of them could come through. I think worst case scenario would be it just turns into like this hot hand thing where both of them get involved. But if you look at just this game, is it just me or did Zach Charbonnet look like the better running back? Did Zach Charbonnet look like the one that kind of fits this system better? He did. He really did. And that's me taking maybe an early season L here. I hope that Walker gets healthier and we see this kind of go back to Walker as the lead guy. And Charbonnet at this point, I think, is going to be more involved. But maybe it can turn more into that 60-40 kind of situation with Walker in the lead. But right now, I am definitely worried. And on the teams where I didn't get Charbonnet and Walker together, it's a very, very big concern.
Better success rate on zone runs and gap runs was Zach Charbonnet last week, according to Fantasy Points data, especially on those zone runs where they actually used him on more zone concept runs. 8 for 30 and a touchdown. Obviously, the touchdown's doing a lot of work there in terms of the success of those plays for Zach Charbonnet. But yeah, like I said on the recap show, played in the 2-minute drill. Otherwise, it's pretty much an even split in terms of the opportunities, which is kind of the worst case scenario, especially because the run game didn't look that great, right? Like, I still don't know quite how good the 49ers defense is with Robert Saleh back there and some younger players along with Nick Bosa and Fred Warner in the front seven. We'll kind of see. Like, that's another, like, I need another week in terms of is this run game not going to be up to expectations? But the reality is, if the run game isn't up to expectations and this is like a 50-50 down the middle split, that's the worst case scenario for both of these guys in terms of the fantasy football outlook, because then it's like you need one to miss time in order for them to be like a true set it and forget it running back one. Otherwise, we're just kind of looking at two like flex dudes.
And I wonder if it's going to take a couple weeks before we even get a better indication of how this is going to turn out, because it's the Steelers next week. It's not necessarily a great matchup there. And will we have to see maybe a few weeks go by for Walker to get further removed from the injury before we can rule out the injury potentially being the cause for this? Yeah, I'm not feeling great about the Walker calls so far.
Nope. I think of all the ones we've talked about here, other than the Dolphins, this is the one that's like most on my coping corner radar. It feels a little bit. I think the first year that we did this show, Boone, that was the year that Tony Pollard was drafted super high in fantasy, and he like couldn't score along the goal line. I think we eventually like renamed the coping corner Pollard's Playground, because he was just every week it was. Do I panic about Tony Pollard? Do I panic about Tony Pollard? It's like, no, he's in the coping corner, brother. This is on my radar a little bit, but I hope I'm wrong, because I just hope this run game is a little bit better going forward. So